From Unity of Houston, Texas, this is the Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational spiritual community providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress now with Reverend Howard Caesar.
So there was a mother who was preparing pancakes at breakfast for her two sons, Kevin, who was 5 years old, and Ryan, who was 3 years old. And the boys began to argue over who was to get the first pancake. And so the mother took this as an opportunity to kind of give a moral lesson. And so she said, you know, if Jesus were sitting here, he would say, "Let my brother have the first pancake. I can wait." And so Kevin, being the older brother, said to his younger brother, "Ryan, you be Jesus." Sounds familiar from my childhood a little bit. You know, at a soul level, we all recognize that life is a gift. And we also recognize that we are here with lessons to learn, and we don't always get them all right. We make some mistakes and some errors, and there's some forgiveness of ourselves and others as we go down that path. But I think we also, as a soul, at a soul level, really want to engage in this life with a sense of purpose and meaning. We want to feel like we can make a contribution in this world, that we can make it a better place for our having been here. And just simply make a difference. And I believe that all those things are really possible as a soul for us to realize, to experience, and to manifest in this experience of life. And not only that, but I believe that is a possibility for each of us to play a role in the world in such a way that you and I can change the world. You and I, in some way, can change the world. Now, sometimes we think that's really lofty, that's big, that's grandiose. How can you say that? And we think of people like Jesus and Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and various people like that, like you have to be like that in that magnitude, but that's not necessarily the case. You know, if you've ever stopped to think that every day that you get up, you have the opportunity really to make a choice to enter into your own personal spiritual growth and unfoldment and spiritual evolution, to make some changes, that we're here actually to evolve spiritually, to evolve inwardly, not just accomplish outwardly, but everything moves from center to circumference, from within out, and that whole dynamic. And that in doing that and investing in that soul development, in a sense, you are helping to change the world. Every amount of progress that you make within your consciousness, you affect the collective consciousness of humanity. You are an energy. Your energy goes out into this world, and it makes a difference. So we can look at this world and say, well, you know, everything seems to stay the same. You know, there's still the same problems, and there's war going on, and we see the same things in headlines and the same things on the news and what have you. And yet, because we choose to grow in some way spiritually and invest in our own spiritual evolution and the importance and the significance of us having been planted in the earth as a soul, to realize that there's some magnitude of importance, and that the more light that we bring into the world, and the more love that we bring into the world, and the more goodness that we bring into the world, that we are basically contributing to changing the world, and realizing that. And there's nothing more that is asked of us than that. You know, that's to do our part. And that essentially, that who we are and how we are in the world is really a contribution to changing the world. And, you know, there's actually even a book that was written some years ago, and it's called Yes, You Can Change the World. And it's a great little book. It's not very long, and it was written by a friend, Aman Matwani. And he was actually here as a speaker some years ago. And in the book, it's basically a story about a young man who is kind of a hard-driving, successful business executive type person. And that over time, he had really grown away from his father. There had become a distance between him and his father, and a lot of it was because he had become, from early on, so absorbed in his pursuit of achieving success externally in the world. And then his father died. And so he went back home, where he hadn't been for a long time, to the funeral. And he was amazed at all the people that showed up for this funeral that had known his dad. And he was even more amazed at all the messages he received from all of these people about how his father had touched their lives and made such an incredible difference in their lives. And he felt, geez, I guess I hardly knew my father, you know? And yet he made this tremendous difference for all of these people. He was just kind of amazed. And there was a lady that came up to him and said, you know, your father completely changed my life. And he changed my whole world, she said. He was such a wonderful human being. And he asked her, well, what did he do, you know, to change your life like that? What did he do for you? And he was thinking in terms of, well, maybe he gave her a loan, maybe he bought her a car, maybe he gave her a job, maybe he helped her get through school, whatever. And she said, well, he didn't really do anything for me. And now he was really puzzled. The next thing she said, he believed in me. He believed in me. He believed in me when no one else did. He believed in me when I could not believe in myself. And my life, when I met him, was a mess. And somehow, when I was with him, I always felt so special. He made me feel so special, like there was something more to me than I could see for myself. And he believed in me. He never compared me to others. He just believed in me. That was such a great gift. And you see, it is a tremendous truth. It's a tremendous truth that the way you see another, and the way you believe in another, and the way you relate to another, and the way you think about another is a powerful impact, because there's an unspoken language in exchange that happens. You can tell how a person thinks about you sometimes just with a look. And energies happen, and there's something called thought atmosphere. And people are sensitive, and they, you know, even if nothing is said. But many times, wonderful things can be said and done as well. And so, you know, I love this quote by Maya Angelou, and I know I've used it before, but she said it so well. Maya Angelou, author, beautiful woman. And what she said is, I've learned that people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. That's something we can all never forget, is what she said. It stands out so big to me in terms of what we're talking about here. The little things that we can do and the little ways in which we can be, how we can create a feeling for another is a gift that goes so far and goes a long way. You know, by seeing past the appearances and seeing the significance and the worth and the value of another is such a great gift. And sometimes people are going through things and they can't find that part of themselves. Other times they can, perhaps. And probably many of you recall moments in your life where there is someone or several people that played that role for you, that were somehow were there for you when you couldn't be there for yourself. And they may have saw something in you that you didn't see in yourself. And you're indebted to them. And hopefully there were many for you along your life's journey. Because it might have been a spouse, it might have been a parent, it might have been a friend, it might have been a sibling, it might have been a co-worker, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, whatever. It could have been anyone, a stranger that you met that somehow just conveyed a message at the right time. And you know, there is a ripple effect in the story. This lady that spoke to the son said, your father affected so many people. It affected the way I reared my son. And then my son affected everyone in his life, you know, his children and his co-workers. And if each person would affect 9 people, and those would affect 9 people, and those would affect 9 people, out 10 tiers, that you would basically have impacted half the world. You have a critical mass there. Something moves. And so it just starts sometimes with us recognizing the role we are to play in the world, or one of the roles we have come to play, which is to look for the absolute good, the highest, the best in others. And when we do that, we are so affirming of it in ourselves. You know, every time we see it and look for it in another is at the same time we get the blueprint. and it's a powerful thing. Hello, I'm Reverend Howard Caesar, Senior Minister of Unity of Houston. Sorry for the interruption, but I just wanted a minute aside with you. Thank you first for tuning in to our program, and my hope is that you've been able to join us on a somewhat regular basis. Through this program, it is our desire to touch people's lives in a very positive way, support and enhance one's spiritual growth, and deepen their relationship with God. We've been televising to the greater Houston community for a number of years, and it has not been our practice to ask for donations or financial support. But today is an exception. Up until now, our ministry has covered the expenses of staff, editing, and TV airtime. However, due to the dip in the economy, in order to continue our weekly broadcasts and remain on TV, your support has become necessary. And keep in mind that a financial gift staying on the air will be a gift not only to yourself, but also to untold numbers of others who tune in and benefit. Any amount of support will greatly be appreciated, along with your prayers. Due to circumstances, some are able to give a smaller amount, and that's fine. Others may be able to give hundreds of dollars. It's all appreciated. And because in the end, it takes many thousands of dollars to be on TV, anyone who is capable and led to give $10,000 or more dollars, I'll be happy to meet with personally if so desired. Again, thanking you for tuning in, thanking you for any help that you can be. Peace and blessings to you from Unity of Houston. We've all had experiences in which we have felt the benefits of someone being like that, encouraging us and believing in us. And we've had the experience of having maybe people who meant a lot to us, and we needed and wanted that encouragement and wanted them to believe in us, and maybe we didn't get it. And that can feel pretty painful, and that can hurt a lot. And those are things that we have to forgive and have to get beyond, of course. But I can think of times in my life when there was someone who believed in me, who saw something and encouraged it, and times when someone didn't, and how that felt. In fact, the biggest example for me, or one of the biggest, I guess, that stands out always is when I was in high school. When I was in high school, it was my freshman and sophomore year, and it was the extreme difference of situations, the way I was treated or seen by two coaches. I was, when I went into my freshman year of high school, I loved basketball. I lived for basketball. I think some of you have been here a while have heard that. And anyway, I was only 4 foot 10 inches. I think 4 foot 11 inches, excuse me. It was important in that day. And anyway, I went out for the freshman basketball team. It was a pretty big school. There were 70 kids that went out, and only 14 or 15 could make it. And so I was one of the last to get cut, but I got cut. And I went with this other team in an organized team that the coach knew, the freshman coach, Mr. Hessler. And in playing with him 2 weeks, somehow they talked, and they brought me back up to the freshman team, and I got to be on the freshman team. And I was the 15th man. I was low on the totem pole. But Mr. Hessler believed in me. He saw something in me, and I could feel it just with his look, that exchange. He gave me chances to perform, and I was able to deliver, and I worked my way up from 15th man to 6th man, first one off the bench to go into the games. And that meant the world to me. And I am forever indebted to that gentleman for having given me that feeling of somebody who believed that much in me, and he brought it out so beautifully and wonderfully. Now, I went into my next year as a sophomore, and I was now 5'1". I had grown 2 inches. So I was a little guy. And the coach there was Mr. Dees, and he really never saw the potential in me or the possibility. And I'm not faulting him. I was little, and so he always saw me as small. He probably couldn't deliver. Somehow I made the team, but I never got to play in a game. One game I got to play in. The town shows up for the whole games, and in our little town. And so I got into one game where the people were chanting, "Caesar, Caesar, Caesar." So the coach had no choice, and we were winning, and he had to put me in. And so I even scored a basket. It was a great moment. But anyway, the painful part was in practices, the teams scrimmage, and everyone gets into a scrimmage at practice, except me. I would sit on the side. You never put me in. Day after day, I never got to get in, even for a scrimmage. And you have no idea how painful that was. I felt sick to my stomach every day I went to practice because it just seemed like an affirmation, like, I've given up on you, it's an invalidation, whatever. And that's not that Mr. Dees, my coach, was a bad person. We didn't have any bad exchanges. He never told me why. But it was just that he didn't have the sensitivity of knowing the impact that can have on a young person. Growing up, trying to move beyond his size or whatever size of his thought about himself or what have you. So anyway, that was a real tough go. And the great news was that later on, and after college, I came back and played competitively with guys that had starred in college. They got into a league, and we traveled around Wisconsin. And by then, I had grown 6 inches from my senior year. And so I really got to experience, playing more competitively. But I just share with you, not to make anybody right or wrong, but the emphasis that made upon me, having experienced those two extremes, and what a difference it can make, and how it causes you to feel. Every person has an intrinsic sense of worth and value, and they want to feel it, they want to live it, they want to know it, they want to be in touch with it, and sometimes they aren't in touch until somebody else sees it and helps bring it out for them. And that's all of life. All through the journey, sometimes we think, I can't do that. I don't think I'm up to that. I'm afraid of that. I might fail in that. And so somebody at any point can come along and say, I believe you can do this. And that's such a gift. And if we can do that for another, when we look with the eyes of, basically with the eyes only and not the heart, then we sometimes have the human tendency to see the limitations and the imperfections. Ralph Waldo Emerson, was a great writer and speaker and whatnot of this. And he once spoke to this. He said, quote, "Men cease to interest us when we find their limitations. As soon as you once come up with a man's limitations, it's all over with him. Has he talent? Has he enterprise? Has he knowledge? It boots not. Infinitely alluring and attractive was he to you yesterday, a great hope, a sea to swim in. Now you have found his shores, found a pond, and you care not if you never see it again." See, he was speaking to the fact that there are people who are like that, and they go by appearances, and they're not willing to look deeper beyond appearances to say, this is a child of God. This guy has, or gal, or whoever it is, has a gift. There's something I need to look forward or further or deeper for. And the more I do that, the further I go deep within myself and connect with the fact that we're all one, we're all on the planet for a purpose, we're all living and growing, and I can be a contribution not only to a person's life, but to the world in a sense. It may seem a small way, but it can be impactful. It's the world of a person's life, and it can be many a person's life. There have been studies done to show the power in believing in another. There's a Dr. Robert Rosenthal. He was, for over 40 years, he was a professor at Harvard as a social psychology. And he had done some studies. And one study that he did, he called it expectations theory. Expectations theory. And having to do with the belief that you have for another influences their performance. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Anyway, he did a study in San Francisco in which they told three high school teachers that they were the best, and that they were going to give them 30 students who were the best, high quality, smart. And so we're giving 3 great teachers, 30 great students, and we want you to teach the same courses as other kids in their grades, the same curriculum, teach the same way, and we're expecting good results because great teachers, great students, all right. Well, it was interesting. At the end of the year, not only did these students stand out overall in everything that they were doing in there, but they were tested citywide, and they led the entire San Francisco school district in the highest grades of a citywide test that was given. And the teachers were called in to, the hierarchy of this study, and said, "Nice job, great, nice going. But we need to tell you something. These students that we told you were brilliant and exceptional, they were average students and they were chosen at random." Really? Wow, that makes us really great teachers then, for sure. Well, there's one more thing we need to tell you. We also chose you at random. But the point was made, you see. The studies revealed that when you have a belief in someone and you hold that belief about someone's goodness, or their opposite, really, your interactions are different. Those interactions facilitate, really, and support the belief that you go in with about that person. So when they had teachers that believed their students were special and intelligent, they looked at them a different way. They held them in a different way. They treated them in a different way. There was a different dynamic, and it conveyed a message, whether spoken or unspoken. I believe in you. I'm believing you. I see something in you, and I know you're going to deliver, and whatever that was conveyed. But we all have a role to play in the world, and we're here, to help others be given the chance to find their gifts. To discover their gifts, as others have hopefully helped us do the same. And as we continue to go down that path and on that journey of discovering our gifts. There's a wonderful story from Robert Fulghum, who was a great philosopher and author. And he was known for his book, in particular, Everything I Needed to Learn, I Learned in Kindergarten. And I know many of you know, and I don't know if you know this tale that he tells, but he tells of a kindergarten teacher who was known as a master teacher. And so there was a teachers' convention coming up. And so they asked her if she would have her class prepare a tale or a fairy tale, a myth, whatever, and act it out at the teachers' convention. So she said yes, and having a unique approach to teaching, she asked the children, "What do you want to do? What's the fairy tale? What's the myth?" And they all talked about it, and they decided on Cinderella. And so she was happy with that because there were lots of roles to play in Cinderella. And so she had them all, choose what they wanted to be. And most of the girls wanted to be the princess and Cinderella and all that. But there was the coachman and the mouse and the dog and the cat. And so they each chose their role in the play. And then when they did, they went over to the one side of the classroom. And anyway, it got down to where there was one child left. And it was a small child who was overweight, not particularly involved and accepted by the other kids, would sometimes get teased. He was a bit different. His name was Norman. And the teacher asked, "Norman, what are you going to be in the play?" And Norman said, "Well, I think I'll be a pig." And the teacher said, "Norman, there is no pig in the story of Cinderella." And Norman said, "Well, there is now." And so they let Norman, do what was the pig's part. And no one knew what to have him do because no one knew of a pig ever being in the Cinderella. But Norman knew what he was going to do. And so Norman would go on his his knees and his hands like a four-legged, and he would go wherever Cinderella went. And he would do whatever Cinderella did. And he would reflect back all the drama of the scene, so that every scene, wherever she went. And so if she was very serious, he would be very serious. He didn't say anything. He would just, on his face, show seriousness. If there was big doubt going on, he would show anxiousness. And if there was a worrisomeness, he would show that. So all these different emotions, he would simply show, following Cinderella around, nobody quite understanding what he was doing in this pig outfit. But at the end of the performance, when the princess is carried off to live happily ever after, Norman stands on his hind legs and starts barking. And so in the rehearsal, this was a bit troublesome because the teacher said, "Look, Norman, even if there is no pig in Cinderella, pigs do not bark." And he said, "Well, this pig does." And so the night of the performance, there was a standing ovation, and it was for the pig. It was Norman the barking pig, who was, as it turns out, the Cinderella. And word got around about this play that took place at the Teachers' Convention to some of the teachers that hadn't been able to attend. And so this teacher got a call from a few people. And one lady called and said, what was it that was so special about this play that I heard was so wonderful? And the teacher on the phone says to the other on the line, well, there is a pig in it, a barking pig. And the person on the line is quiet for a bit and says, well, but there is no barking pig in Cinderella. And the teacher says, well, there is now. It's a great story, and what I love about that story is what a great coach and teacher that teacher was. She didn't define Norman. She let Norman choose and let him show his new uniqueness. Didn't destroy the play, but she had enough courage to let him be him and find himself in his role and his part to play. She realized he was a unique child, and he needed to help find that dimension in him. I'm sure it was a great gift to him in his life and furthered him forward. And I just admire that so much in that story and what that teacher did. Jesus said, I have to be about the Father's business. You and I have business to be about. We've been planted here, a seed in the great earth, and we are to grow, and we are to flower with love and light and an ability to see the flower and the beauty in every other being planted here. That's a great gift, and that's being about the Father's business. So we're all here in this life with this tremendous opportunity to see beyond appearances, to see the more, to believe in the more that is within others and within ourselves. Because again, as we see it in others, we're going to see it in ourselves. It helps bring it out in them, and it helps bring it out in us. And in the end, we have made a difference. And we have left this place a better place. And we have, I believe, changed the world in some way. God bless you all.
When you visit Unity of Houston, you'll find a spiritual community, a church where you can connect and learn and grow with a progressive approach to Christianity. At Unity, we welcome you no matter what your beliefs. You'll find a teaching, loving, inspiring experience as we help each other be all we're created to be. Check us out. We'd love to have you. Find us online at unityhouston.org, and remember, life is meant to be good.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. Unity is inclusive, welcoming people of all walks of life in dignity and love. We believe that love, strength, and goodness dwells within you. May we all live in unity with God, humanity, and all of God's creation. And remember, as Reverend Caesar says, life is meant to be good.